Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I'm Candace Pollock Moore. I'm the Assistant Director of the Southern Region SARE program, and I'm also the grant manager of our three smaller grant programs, the Graduate Student Grant, the On-Farm Research Grant, and the Producer Grants. So I'm just going to start off by providing just a little bit of background information on the SARE outreach team in terms of what we do. We visit states in the Southern region every year for two specific reasons. One is to raise awareness of the SARE program in terms of the grants that we do offer in sustainable agriculture research, and then also to raise awareness of the educational resources that we have available for people to use in their community efforts. And we also meet with stakeholders in each of the states to find solutions to some of the challenges and issues that they may face in terms of furthering sustainable agriculture in their communities. So the following is the list of our outreach team. We have Dara Monifa Cooper is our communications specialist, currently based in the Virgin Islands. Patrick Lillard is an NGO representative for Administrative Council. David Redditch is Professional Development Program Manager located at the Kerr Center for Oklahoma. He is also the grant manager for the Professional Development Program grant. And Brendan Washington is our 1890 Land Grant Liaison and a limited resource outreach specialist for our region. And Paul Vincelli is our 1862 Land Grant Liaison based out of University of Kentucky. And all these individuals will be contributing to our presentation today. And I will now turn it over to Paul.
Thanks, Candace. And before I get started, I think probably everybody on that end knows Matt Smith and Jonathan Wyndham, but you guys maybe can say a few words.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know everybody that joined. So I'm Matt Smith. I am the director of Clemson's PD Research and Education Center in Florence, South Carolina. I am the state, South Carolina State co-chair, co-coordinator for Southern SARE. And I have a lot of experience at the national level when I was with ARS as a national program leader for sustainable agricultural systems. So I come to this with a pretty good bit of background. The program assistant that assists both Clemson and South Carolina State with this program is Mr. Jonathan Wyndham, and I'll turn it over to him to call on you all for introductions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm Jonathan Wyndham, and like Dr. Smith said, I'm the program assistant for the South Carolina SARE program, and I'm an extension associate at the PD Rec in Florence. So I'm just going to go down the list here and call on people to introduce yourself if you want to. And so we'll start off with, let's see here, Channing Hauser.
Hi, my name is Channing Hauser. I am the Sustainable Agricultural Coordinator for PAL Spartanburg here in South Carolina. I'm excited to be here, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Susan Crook.
Hello, I am Susan Crook. I'm the director of the Master Beekeeping Program for South Carolina Beekeeping Association and work hand in hand with Ben Powell on beekeeping education here in South Carolina, and I'm excited to be here.
Nice. Okay. Daryl Orage, forgive me if I butcher your name.
That's okay. I'm Daryl Orage. I'm with the Gullah Geechee Agricultural Research Project. I'm based out of St. Helena Island.
All right. Thank you. Dawn Stuckey. Dawn. All right, Henry Jones.
Hello, I'm Henry Jones. I'm the president of the National Veterans Agriculture Association in Gray Court, South Carolina, and I'm glad to be a part of this program.
Thank you for being here today. Margaret Grant.
Hey there, I'm Margaret Grant with the Low Country Food Bank, and we serve the entire coast of South Carolina.
Thank you. Najma Thomas.
Good morning. Fantastic pronunciation there. Najma Thomas. I'm an associate professor with the University of South Carolina, Beaufort, and I serve as PI on the research grant with Daryl here in St. Helena, Gullah Geechee Agriculture Research.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, is there anyone I did not call on?
See if Dawn respond now.
Dawn, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute right now.
Awesome.
Well, Dr. Vincelli, take it away.
Sure. Okay. So Channing, let me just clarify. You are employed by the city of Spartanburg. Is that right?
Not by the city, but the organization that I work for is in Spartanburg.
Okay. Okay. Just trying to understand the range of representatives we've got here. And so is that an environmental group or a advocacy?
It's a nonprofit organization that just works with a lot of other nonprofits, mainly towards local farmers and just local agriculture.
Okay, great. Yeah, gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to understand that better. So glad you're here and glad you're all here. Thanks for joining us, and we'll do our best to make this a useful session for you. There are some hopes, I guess, and dreams that we have for the site visits. This is a virtual site visit, of course, and one is a better understanding of the SARE program by people such as yourself, so that you all understand the opportunities for grants and collaboration and outreach efforts that might be possible for you in supporting your program, with the outcome that hopefully more fundable proposals would be submitted from South Carolina. Number two, we want to better understand South Carolina's needs in this area of sustainable agriculture and funding of grants related to it and outreach related to it. So, the outcome of that, of course, would hopefully be grant programs and outreach programs that better serve your needs in South Carolina with respect to sustainability. And third is to build confidence in SARE decisions. We, at least as appropriate, we hope we can convey the kind of things we think and do in administering these programs. And you'll get a chance to learn more about that here in this presentation. So next slide, please. So we'd like your input and ideas at any point during the session. We will have an open discussion to allow for any comments you want to make. But specifically, we'd like to know what are missed opportunities for your state that we should be more aware of. Number two, how can our visibility as a program and our engagement with the people of South Carolina through you, how can we improve those? And third, what are any changes we can make to make the program better, basically. Next slide. So there's the map of the 4 regions of the SARE program. So we're the Southern SARE, Southern SARE is the best way to say it. And so we're all funded through that part of the program. Next slide. And of course, SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. It's a USDA program, and it was authorized by the 1985 Farm Bill. Currently, about $36 million is administered through the 4 regions. So it's a significant program. And the goal is to support farmers, researchers, educators, and others that work with farmers to explore sustainable agriculture practices. The primary tool is, of course, our grants program. We have 5 programs, and outreach team members will describe those in brief coming up. Next slide. So that's kind of a cutesy picture there, but I think the team seems to like it because it's a moment where we remind ourselves that anybody who does anything in food systems helps to feed our families, and we thank you for what you do. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a 2-slide sequence that I think is I found it very interesting to think about and learn about. The most, in my opinion, the most sustainable food system that's ever existed on Earth is the hunter-gatherer food system that persisted with really no significant problems on the global scale, at least to human existence. And it just went on for tens and tens and tens of thousands of years. But the problem is, of course, that it cannot support all the people we have. That's the problem with it. It's way short of that. So next slide. And this is the most sustainable food system that I myself have witnessed. And this is in Eastern Nicaragua. And basically that's one of the leaders of the indigenous community. And basically what they do, it's called the slash mulch. So they cut down the vegetation in a defined area. It might be a hectare in size, or roughly it might be twice that. And that vegetation releases its nutrition over the period of a few years. And so that provides some basal nutrition for the plants that they seed there, as well as, like, you can see the beans on the forest floor and the bananas behind, or platano, it might be plantain. So it's a really low productivity system, but it works for them, and it works quite well. But the problem is, of course, on a global scale, it could support no more than about 2 to 4% of us, and that's not going to work. So I like these slides because it reminds me how challenging this issue is of sustainability and food production. We'll get there. We have to get there, but it's a challenge. And I'd just like for everybody to understand that this is why sustained funding in various programs is so important, because we really don't have the answers we need at this point. So next slide. And this is the last of my series of slides. The pillars of sustainability are represented in this triangle. And this is there is a formal USDA definition of sustainable agriculture. It's a very good definition, but it's quite, it's not intuitive. And so SARE also talks in terms of what you see here, pillars of sustainability. There's profitability, or economic vitality of the farming system, and without which there is no food. If the farmers can't survive, we don't get fed. Stewardship on the lower left is, we usually think of that as environmental stewardship, and very important for obvious reasons. The third is quality of life, and that refers to quality of life for farmers, farm families, rural communities, and urban communities and suburban communities, where food is also, they're part of the food system too. I would say my own experience, I must admit, looking back, that the quality of life element is probably the pillar that I've spent the least time on, thought the least about. I think that's something I would work on and working on as I go forward. But we natural scientists sometimes have tunnel vision, so no apologies, but just we try to do better. So anyway, that's all I have. Next slide would be Patrick.
Thank you, Paul. So as Candace mentioned, I'm Patrick Lillard, and I'm an NGO representative on the Southern SARE Administrative Council. And I've been on the AC for 6 years, and I've just been really amazed at how flexible for a federal program it is. So I'm going to cover kind of a little bit of the background and then the structure to help you kind of understand what it is and what we do. So as Paul mentioned, SARE was funded through the 1985 Farm Bill, and it had support from regional leaders as well as land-grant universities, especially in the regional legislation. And it's in some ways supported by each state's land grants that they provide support for the state coordinators. And the Southern SARE, the region, is a little unique that each state has 2 land grants. David, you'll correct me later if there's, I think, Alabama that actually has 3 land grants. And so each land grant, both 1862 and 1890, has a state coordinator, and then each state has a program assistant as well. The state support and how kind of those state programs looks a little different within each state. But kind of within our region, especially, we expect kind of the 1890 and 1862 to have a partnership, and that partnership again looks different within each state. Next slide. Okay, Paul had that one map showing kind of the 4 regions. And the great thing about this federal program is we, in some ways, have a lot of autonomy within those regions because each region has different needs. And so as the administrative council within the region, we can determine where to award funding. So we can modify our grant programs to make sure they're meeting the regional needs. So each region has the same amount of funding, but we do have control over how that funding is awarded. So each region has an administrative council. The Southern SARE AC is made up of 23 members. About half are agency representatives. So they would come from land-grant universities, USDA, where else? Now I'm blanking. And those agency representatives are appointed by their respective agencies. And then 11 representatives are accepted by nomination. So people can apply to be on the AC. And those are, we have 7 producer seats, 3 NGO seats, 1 agribusiness, and 1 quality of life. And from the nominations, the administrative council will review and vote on those positions. And what we're trying to do is get as diverse of an administrative council as possible. So we have all the voices from the region on the administrative council. And so we look for demographic, geographic diversity, as well as for the producer having diversity within the types of operations. The administrative council meets twice a year to vote on funding and just other administrative things. But then taking a step back, so the 4 regions, I think what makes this program so flexible and adaptable and unique is that while it's a federal program, each region, the program is administered through a host institution. So for the Southern region, that would be the University of Georgia, and it's led by Jeff Jordan there. And then for the professional development program, that's through the Kerr Center in Oklahoma. And so I think that's definitely one of the distinct differences with the federal program, is that we have a host institution that runs it. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is kind of the primary job of the administrative council is to decide on how funds are awarded. So with our grants programs, which Dara will cover in just a minute. And all administrative council members are expected to review proposals. We review ones that are most relevant to our positions on administrative council member or administrative council. So producers will review producer grants. All of us will review the research and education grants. And so we'll usually review those in subcommittees, and then we'll vote on the full AC, we'll vote on the awarding of those funds. So just one last note is in thinking about how the proposals are reviewed, is that they are reviewed by all AC members, which includes scientists, farmers, NGO representatives. So if you're submitting a proposal, make sure and keep that in mind to make sure and write it so it's understandable by all those audiences. All right, and I'll pass it to Dara.
Thanks, Patrick. So morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. You've learned a little bit about the history of SARE, the purpose, how we're structured and everything. And so we've been hinting at some of these grants, mentioning some of them. I'm going to give you a little overview of them, and they'll be gone into more detail with some of the other members. And then we'll get into the history specific to South Carolina's and how y'all have been doing on the grants. So you see here the 5 that are listed, and they each have their corresponding acronym, of course. So for those, I'm still getting used to some of the acronyms myself, but the research and education grants, professional development, graduate student, on-farm research, and producer grants. And for the R&Es, this is the SARE, Southern SARE's flagship grant. So, you know, the research grants are about 400,000, education grants at 50, and there's a pre-proposal and full proposal process. The call for proposals opens in March, and you'll get more specifics about this later on, but the funding shows up in 2023 once awarded. The professional development grants, including the trainers and things like that, they also have the proposal processes, and their cap is at 80,000, with their call being in July for funding the following year in 2023. Graduate student grants for master's and PhD students, the cap is about 16.5 thousand, and their call is in February for funding in 2022, later in this year. The on-farm research grants for ag professionals who work with farmers is considered more of a mini grant, and you'll learn more about that. But the 20,000 is the amount for that one, and the call opens in September for funding in 2023. And the producer grants for farmers and farmer groups is about 15,000 for individual farmers and 20,000 for farmer groups. And the call is in September for funding in 2023. So now as we go into South Carolina's grant history, you'll see that since 1988, South Carolina has been awarded $3,280,190 in grants to support 67 projects. In the little map there, you'll see where South Carolina falls geographically within the southern region, and also some of these points pulled out on the left side of that map. But the producer grants had 19 awards, 90 would be great. The graduate student 6, 10 for the on-farm, 11 for professional development, and 15 for research and education. And you can see the dollar amounts, the total there also in the information. This next slide goes into the ranking in terms of comparison with the other states. And you can see that under the R&E, research and education, and you see PDP graduate, but under the R&E, there were about 15 awards and totaling 2.1 million. So there's some room for some more applications to come in for all of these, so that you could kind of move a little bit higher up on that ranking. Under the PDP grants, there were about 11 at the total of 648,853. And for graduate grants, there were 6 with a dollar total of 73,864. So you could see in red where those are. As we move into the other slide, you'll notice the on-farm and producer grant history, where you were about number 8 down in that ranking, with 10 awards totaling 142,377. The producer grants, 19 awards at a total of 171,910. So room for improvement, room for much more to happen if applications come in and raise that up.
All right, research and education grants. This is, as mentioned, is our flagship program. It is split into 2 pools of funds. The first is research up to $400,000 and education grants up to $50,000. The difference between education and the research and education and PDP education is these can directly train farmers. We're looking for teams of researchers. We like an interdisciplinary approach. Focus on systems research, but we do require farmers to be included in the research projects. They have to be part of the team, the designing the project or participating. It is a 2-step process. We have a pre-proposal and a full proposal. So the pre-proposals are released in March and they're due in June. They are reviewed. Then the ones that are selected are invited in August to submit a full proposal. And this is all online. The full proposals are due in mid-November. And then those are reviewed by a technical review team and a review team of the AC. And then the decision is made on what to award in February. PDP grants, or professional development, operates on the train the trainer model. And this is where individuals who are trained in this program are expected to go out and train farmers. So it doesn't directly train farmers, even though we like to see them in the development of the education, and they can participate in the delivery of the education. And in some cases, they can attend some of the trainings as long as it focuses on the train the trainer aspect. While we say 80,000 is kind of the upper limit, there really isn't an upper limit, but that allows us to give out more grants. It also is a pre-proposal, full proposal process. The target audience is different. It's Extension NRCS FSA, State Department of Ag, and nonprofit NGOs who go out and train individuals to train farmers. The timeline, it's shorter than the R&Es. The call goes out for pre-proposals in July, they're due back in August. In October, after they're reviewed, the invitation goes out to select full proposals, and those are submitted again online. The full proposals are due in November. And as you can tell, this year's set of them is out for review right now. They go through a technical committee review, then they go through the AC PDP subcommittee, and then the full AC in the February meeting votes on which ones to fund.
Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, I'm going to go through our three smaller grant programs. The graduate student grants, this might not be a grant program that would specifically be targeting this group, but just to make you aware that we do offer graduate student grants for master's and PhD students at accredited institutions in the southern region who are interested in doing research in sustainable agriculture. The calls for proposals for those grants will be opening February 4th, with awarding later on this year in August, with those grant projects starting in on September 1st. The on-farm research grants might be a grant program that would interest the folks here on the call today. These grants are specifically designed for ag professionals like cooperative extension or NGOs who are interested in doing a small research project with a farmer, either on that farmer's farm, or for example, if you have a research farm at your facility, that this particular grant program would give you the opportunity to conduct small production or marketing related research projects in areas of sustainable ag topics. And we call our on-farm research grants our mini grants because of just the small size of the grants. It's $20,000 for 2-year projects, but compared to the research and education grants, the on-farm research grants are much more simplified application process. There's no pre-proposal involved, and just the call for proposal itself is not quite as rigorous as the research and education grants are. So they really are ideal for those folks who are interested in wanting to do a little bit of research, but have not really schooled that well on, let's just say, grant writing or conducting a research project. So it's a good stepping stone grant program for those individuals, and it's also a great introduction to the SARE program, just to kind of get folks introduced to sustainable agriculture, what we're looking for in terms of a grant project from a sustainability standpoint. And it does encourage that collaboration in that relationship building with the farmers in their community. So those calls for proposals do open in September, with funding in February the following year. And then the final grant that we do provide are producer grants, which function similarly to the on-farm research grants. But they are specifically designed for farmers to apply as the principal investigator on that grant project and for them to conduct the grant work on their farm. The thing with the producer grants is though we do encourage collaboration with other ag professionals, whether it be somebody within cooperative extension or it may be a nonprofit organization within their community in order to help assist in leading that project, assist in the outreach efforts, assist in the data collection, you know, in just in terms of the production and the marketing aspects of the research projects. So these are 2-year projects for $15,000 for individual farmers and $20,000 for farmer groups. And by farmer groups, we mean individuals like cooperatives. And the grant call falls in line with the same timeline as the on-farm research grants. Those open in September with funding in February the following year. So for the most part, all of our grant programs are extremely competitive. And so there are certain things that applicants can do that'll help strengthen their proposals to increase their chances of successfully being funded. And over the years, we've picked up on some main points that would cause a proposal to be rejected, and some of these points are here on this slide. When you are working on a SARE grant proposal, some of the things to keep in mind would be that you definitely want to make sure that your project idea does have a sustainable agriculture focus, and that the research topics do fit in with SARE's mission and vision in terms of addressing in some form the 3 pillars of sustainability that Paul mentioned earlier: farmer profitability, environmental stewardship, and community quality of life. You want to make sure that your topic is unique and innovative, either something that's new that hasn't been done before, or perhaps if it has been researched before, it has a different angle that you'd want to be looking at. A lot of times we do get some really good scientific, well-written science proposals, but the topics have already been well researched. So the resources for those particular topics already exist. So it's a situation where the proposed idea doesn't necessarily need to be funded. The other thing you want to keep in mind too is when you're exploring your topic, that you want to make sure that it's truly sustainable. You don't want to look at a project that's simply masking or masking or conventional agriculture, or I'm trying to get my words right, putting a Band-Aid on a conventional way of farming and calling it sustainable agriculture. What we're looking for is something that's more transformative, that's really going to change the way that you're going to be farming for not only currently, but for future generations. More specifically, the things that you really want to look at would be your budgets and your approaches and methods. So you really want a well-written approaches and methods in terms of how you're going to conduct your research project. And your budgets, in terms of what you ask for in your budget, should align with how you're going to conduct your research project and what you're going to need in terms of conducting your research project. So sometimes we come across proposals where things are asked for in the budgets that are not needed in the approaches and methods, and so the technical reviewers question those types of entries. And the last thing is that applicants ask for things that we simply can't fund. So for every grant that we do provide, there is allowable and non-allowable budget items. So you really want to pay attention to those budget items and only include things in the budget that SARE can fund. And I'll turn it over to Brennan.
Good morning, everyone. thank you for joining us today. The Southern SARE's main purpose in life is to advance sustainable agriculture through the grant programs that you just heard about. However, we do have other ways of helping nonprofits and organizations accomplish that goal through some discretionary funding. So we provide discretionary funds to help with that fund outreach efforts around sustainable agriculture. And it takes several forms. It's financial support for conferences, workshops, and field days, assistance with acquiring educational materials. We have a program called the Sustainable Ag Leadership Program. And David, who we talked to you about the PDP program, also has some discretionary funding and state funding for training that helps to provide to the place. Next slide. So what is our sponsorship program? We provide sponsorship programs to help support conferences, workshops, and field days. I'm sorry, I'm driving. We just took a road from past the road. And it's to put on any type of workshops, field days, educational events that deal with subjects around sustainable agriculture. To be considered, it has to be held in the southern region. It has to serve farmers or audiences who serve farmers. It needs to include an outreach component, and it needs to relate to sustainable agriculture. And so as an example, if you want to know what type of events these might look like, it just so happens we have two folks on the phone who have taken advantage of our conference function. Mr. Henry Jones, we provided him with some funding. He's going to be putting on a blueberry production and propagation workshop later on this spring. And Daryl Orridge is also on the phone. We put on a workshop out in St. Helena Island on cover crops for farmers. We actually went out, had a half-day class session, and then went out to the field and planted this farmer's field and cover crops. So that's the type of stuff we do. I understand there's a beekeeper on the farm, so if you want to do some on the phone, if you want to do any events around beekeeping or any type of food system work, that's what this funding is for. Next slide. So we also have what we call a Sustainable Ag Leadership Program. And this really was born out of COVID. We started having some funds pile up because no one, was traveling and there were no conferences and workshops being held. And we needed to figure out a way how we could still bring this money to bear to help spread the word about sustainable agriculture. So we came up with this program, and it champions leadership contributions to people who have served historically underserved audiences. Participants receive sponsorship support of up to $3,000 to conduct education and training activities in areas of sustainable ag. And the eligibility is historically underserved farmers and ranchers and leadership positions in their communities, or farmer groups who have demonstrated leadership contributions, as well as nonprofits and other community groups. And the funding supports education or training activities. It must pertain to sustainable agriculture and can be in person or online. So that's Alicia Chevres from Alabama A&M University. She was in our second cohort, and she did a project where she just set up some workshops to bring financial readiness and financial planning to underserved farmers in Alabama. And Dr. Najwa Thomas who's on the line, was actually in our first cohort, and she did some training events around introducing Gullah Geechee farmers to market gardening, market farming. So that's the type of events and projects that these folks feel is necessary for the communities. And it's not a permanent program for us yet. I hope that one day we will decide to make this funding, but as long as we have the funding, we'll continue to do these. And that goes for all of our conference sponsorships. These are not grant programs. you just fill out an application, which is on our website. And as long as it meets the requirements of the program and in this big and provided with money, we typically will fund them. So, and that's it. Glad to see everybody on the phone. Glad to see some of my buddies. So thank you for having us.
All right. Another aspect of the PDP program are state training funds and the state coordinators. In the South, each land grant has 2 state coordinators based at the land grants. Alabama's a little different. There are 2 land grants plus Tuskegee. So there are 3 coordinators. Then Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands each have 1. They receive $30,000 plus 10% indirect to hire a program assistant, and then $20,000 plus 10% indirect for training funds. The only state without a program assistant is Alabama. They don't have what's called a model state program in place, and they have received, actually it's 20,000 plus 10% indirect. Travel scholarships. Brennan briefly mentioned the expiring funds, discretionary funds we have, and in PDP we turn those into travel scholarships. The amount varies from year to year, and it based on how much funding we have left from expiring grant funds. It's managed through state coordinators. Requests for under $3,000 I can approve directly when they're submitted if the expenses are allowed, and it's a program that that you want to send somebody to that teaches on sustainable ag. If it's 3,000 or up, I have to have it approved through the executive committee, which meets monthly, or when the full AC meets. You can pay a mentor farmer traveling. Now, a mentor farmer is someone who's a leader in the community. And this kind of ties in with Brennan's program with the leadership program. So if there's someone who's a farm leader in the community and you want to apply for funds to send them to a workshop, training, conference, that's allowed, as well as, of course, the audience PDP reaches out to Extension, NRCS, FSA. The trainings must meet the train the trainer model. In other words, you're going to send somebody somewhere to receive training and bring that back and use that for educational program for farmers in your state, county, region. They do not have to be traveled to in the South. It can be traveled to events outside of the Southern region. The Fellows Program. This is administered at the national level. It's started several years ago, and it's gotten high marks from those who participated. It's for extension training, and it's a very robust program where we have 8 fellows in any given year, 1 from each region. So there's 4 selected each year. They participate in a 2-year training rotation where they go to 1 fall and 1 spring training in each of the regions. So by the time they're done, they have visited all 4 SARE regions. They learn about sustainable ag and how it works in each SARE region. They participate in an activity that's developed called Reading the Farm. And a farm is selected in each one of these areas, and the agents work with a farmer to learn about the farm and recommend ways to improve its sustainability.
Okay, so you've heard a whole lot about some different opportunities when it comes to SARE funding, and much of them center around our grants, but obviously there's some other things that are possible. So SARE offers much more than only grants. You heard a little bit about the conference sponsorships from both Brennan and Dave just now, and the link to it will be in the chat. It's actually already there. Thank you, Jonathan. And I'll go into that a little bit more just to show you on the website where you can find the information on that. And the Learning Center and the resources that are available is also going to be one of your favorite spots on the website. I can tell you that now. So national publications that include fact sheets, bulletins, books. You see the images there on the slide. Those are some of the covers of some of the publications, from Building a Sustainable Business to Building Soils and Better Crops, everything listed here on the slide, New Farmers Market, Managing Cover Crops, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide so that we can get to showing you the numbers in terms of how these educational materials and resources have been helpful. There are, at the time of this slide's production, 291 different resources specific to the Southern region. And the resources and learning page, which we're going to get to in a second, the link is also in your chat box there, is what we'll be able to, where we'll direct you to so you can find some of these resources. 53% of producers reported using new production practices after reading a SARE publication. So this is feedback that shows the usefulness of these publications, hopefully encouraging you to take advantage of them. 64% of producers said that their SARE project helped them achieve higher sales. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so that you can take a peek at both of the things I mentioned, the conference sponsorships, which Jonathan just put this link in the chat. And as you see here, Brennan mentioned it, Dave just mentioned it, can be regional events as well as national events taking place in the Southern region. All this information is there for you on the website, but to be considered, you want to pay attention to these bullets. And Brennan went into some of these already. Serving domestic audiences, including farmer education and outreach, obviously related to sustainable agriculture. That's what we're all about. Pertaining to an event within the Southern region. I'm going to go now to our resources and learning page. And this is again, one of the favorites. So, and you'll get here right in this area on the website. And once you type in this box here, so let's say we're talking about cover crops, and I press enter or the little search icon, you'll see right here that you already start getting populated on your right, whatever publications are related to that. But on your left, you can go in and select various categories. We do have the Southern region checked off here since we are Southern SARE. But depending on the category you want to go into, education and training, for example, you can click on that. The results will change. So maybe they don't have education and training. Maybe they have something related to something else in there. And basically you get the gist of it. Once you click on the different options over here, decide on the format, you'll be able to find what you need. So that's what I wanted to show you, because that's, for me, a favorite part of getting on that website, to find some valuable resources that have obviously been very helpful to other farmers and related. Thank you.
Thanks, Dara. So as David mentioned earlier, each state has state ag coordinators that drive the SARE program and sustainable agriculture at a local level. So here in South Carolina, the following individuals on this slide are your state ag coordinators: Matt Smith with Clemson, and Joshua Dosky at South Carolina State University. And then Jonathan Wyndham serves as the SARE program assistant in terms of communicating with the state ag coordinators in terms of SARE resources and sustainable ag resources. So the folks on the call today are more than welcome to reach out to us for questions that they might have about SARE grants or SARE resources, but you also have local contacts in South Carolina for those types of questions as well. So just making you aware of those individuals who would be available to answer those questions that you might have. So I'll turn it back over to Paul to wrap things up.
Okay, you'll be able to hear me now. Yeah, thanks, Candace, for that and for everybody's presentation. Yeah, and just to reiterate, the state coordinators and the staff of SARE here in South Carolina are excellent professionals and very enjoyable people, and they know a lot. And they know some things that I don't know, for sure. So remember that they're your resource people. You may always contact us as well because we're public employees, but it's probably best to start with your local people because it helps build your local infrastructure of when they help you out, they know what's going on. So keep that in mind. And another point, I'm sort of transitioning into discussion, but one of the questions that came up during a previous training here was how would my project be worth writing up? Is it going to fit into a SARE funding program? And that's such a very good question. So I wanted to make sure I brought it up again. And basically, the recommendation that we offer is first, always make sure you read the producer or somebody reads the call for proposals carefully from end to end, because there's a lot of information that will help the individual decide, do I submit this or not? But the other is if you contact Matt, for example, or Joshua, they'll be able to help you decide if it's got a, if it's a good fit for the particular funding program that you're looking for. So that I think those are the things I wanted to make sure I said. And at this point, we've got a small survey we hope you'll take that'll help us immensely to get your input. And really at this point, we just want to open it up for questions, comments, anything of that nature. And it kind of puts you on the spot. It's a little bit uncomfortable with these virtual technologies, but we hope you'll think about what you need and what your needs are, and give us some ideas. Help us if you ever had problems in the past that you'd like to address. We'd like to know about it. So I'll start.
Paul,
Yeah.
I'd like to make one other comment.
Yes,
I
sir.
realize this is kind of, we have NGOs involved in this call. And one of the things about the R&Es, a little bit of history on the education side, the $50,000 grant, then came about several years ago. We had a meeting with NGOs, and this was nationwide. And the discussion revolved around what their role is in SARE and their competitiveness in the grant program. And it was realized a lot of NGOs, what their wheelhouse is directly training farmers. So that's where we came up with the idea of breaking some funding out in the R&Es to make it. Now, it's not solely for NGOs. Anybody can apply to it that's eligible, but it was put in place because those funds can be used to directly train farmers. So I wanted to make you kind of aware of that.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, David. My experience, I'm somewhat new to SARE, folks, and really glad to be here. And one of the things that SARE seems to be doing is it's very responsive to input. Input, if $100,000 is not enough for research and education grants. We don't think it's worth our time to apply for these. Okay, we'll bump it up. Now it's 400,000. David's point as well is there was a responsiveness to problems expressed. NGOs work directly with farmers, so let's provide funding for those NGOs. So your comments are heard. So really, just opening the floor. Glad to, Matt. Yeah, maybe you've got some comments.
Well, I think we've progressed far enough that, again, Jonathan and I are here to help you. We have a little pot of money. We can help seed something potentially, especially train the trainer type activities. But I really wanted to say that particularly for NGOs, if you're not used to the SARE granting program, a good way to learn how to write a grant is to review grants. So if you volunteer to review for SARE, you will see the kind of grants that come through. And after the fact, you can see whether they got funded or not. And so you can see, what makes a good, successful grant proposal. So, take advantage of that opportunity. It's a good way to polish your skills at potentially asking for funds via this process.
Guarantee that's a good way to improve your competitiveness, folks. That's a very good point, Matt. And I'll just remind you all that there's a poll there. We really hope you will provide responses. Please consider that.
I see that Najma Thomas has her hand up. Did you have something you needed to ask,
Thank you.
comment on?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for recognizing my hand. Can you all hear me clearly? I'm on
She
the
broke up.
island and my connection is suspect.
You're back. Yeah, I can hear
It
you.
was suspect, but I think if you
Yeah,
slowly, it will help since the connection is a little unstable. So if you want to speak a little slower, it may catch your words better.
okay. Thank you for that. I just wanted to share that we have been really pleased with our partnership with SARE. Brennan has conducted some amazing outreach in our area. And, as a researcher and a farmer in a limited resource community, I did not have any idea about SARE and the various opportunities available to us until I met Brennan at a farmers conference. I can't even remember where. And so we've been really here. We did receive a research grant to work in partnership with Gullah Geechee farmers here on St. Helena Island. One of the things I would offer for your consideration about the process, the grant itself is fantastic. It is really encouraging the amount of emphasis that you all place on engaging farmers and compensating farmers. That is encouraging, and it's something that we just want to encourage you all to continue to do and increase. One of the concerns we had this year, as I mentioned, was around process. So our award letter came in February. We received an official, the notice came in February. We received an official notification, I think around March or early April, March, with an April 1 start date. But we were told, of course, that we needed to wait until the negotiation process had been complete. So we gave our farmers a heads up, our farming partners, and said, we were successful and we're going to get started on this project. We've got a good timetable. We've allowed for a month and a half for the contracting process. So we will be able to start right when you all need support during the busy season. And unfortunately, the contracting process between my university, USCB, and I believe it's UGA, that's sort of your representative university, that process was extended a considerable amount of time, all the way through mid-July. And so we could not get the work started with our farmers in earnest until about 3 months after we'd initially suggested that we would get the work done. Now, as a researcher, as a part of a university in the system, that is under, I can deal with that. I'm faculty, even though I'm 9-month faculty, I'm not that invested in terms of the compensation structure. But when you tell limited resource farmers that, we're going to be able to do this work and there's going to be, put your time aside and we're going to make sure that you're compensated for the training, and, there are going to be some resources for you to get, the skills that you've been needing and that you asked us for, because we really did do this, we developed the proposal in partnership with them. So we lost a little bit of credibility because the timing. And so I say all of that, and I hope you all are still able to hear me, and I apologize for any breaking up. But I say all of that to suggest that perhaps in that guidance document for the research grants, maybe you could suggest a lot more lead time between award date and actual start time on the grant activities. Again, we've been really pleased with the partnership outside of that. We've got things up and running now. We've built even stronger partnerships among our farmers, and we pulled on a lot more cooperating farmers than we promised in our proposal. So we're moving forward, and we also know that there is the possibility of a no-cost extension here. But that's just a piece of learning for future, and particularly for folks who might not be as familiar with the grant management process. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Dara, do you want to say something? You look like you were about to.
I was just about to thank her for her feedback, because that's useful information to hear directly, and appreciate the way that she presented it as well, so that it gave room for figuring out solutions.
Yeah.
I'm new to SARE as well, so I just always appreciate when people provide that type of feedback in that way.
Yeah. If you don't mind, someday we'll meet physically, in person, and I'll offer you a high five. This is great feedback. So thank you for that. Yeah. So, go ahead.
And Paul,
Yes,
when this problem arose, I did run some interference to find out what was going on. And I think the disconnect is, the folks at UGA said, well, they can go ahead and start the project once they get it, but funds still got to flow. And we need to be mindful that a particular institution may not want to start laying out funds prior to all the negotiations being complete. And, that's what happens when we deal with limited resource communities and organizations sometimes. Sometimes, there's a reluctance to start laying out money before all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. So maybe that's something we could take up at the EPIC committee meeting in February. Because I don't have a solution for it, but other than putting some verbiage in there to allow a longer lead time.
Let me hop in and make comments on this. I mean, I understand. I feel for what Najma is saying, because we run into those issues as well with other grant applicants. So their situation is not unique, but also at the same time, I think that which we could work on as well in terms of education, but there is a lack of knowledge when it comes to when the institutions start getting involved with the grant award process, and there are certain regulations that need to be followed from USDA's perspective when the grant award when the grant is awarded, and then the process that you have to go through in order to officially execute the award. When you do receive the official award letter, you can start your grant project, but it does take time for the institutions to go through the regulatory process of making the award official. And then once the grant contract is official, then you can start submitting your invoices for reimbursement. So there is a gap in there, and I'm not sure if that's a gap that we can resolve. The other thing that I would recommend too is that part of the process with officially awarding a grant project is the reviewing of the budgets, and then the requirement of any revision of those budgets before the award, before the grant project can be sent up for additional approval. And I know that there can be some big gaps in terms of lag time with communication between our office and the grant PI with regards to those budget revisions. So I mean, if there are possibilities that those gaps can be narrowed, then that would help speed up that process as well. So it's just a situation that we don't have control over, unfortunately. I mean, once the grant is awarded, then it goes to the institutions following USDA regulations in terms of the grant the grant execution process, and that unfortunately takes time. And not to use the pandemic as an excuse, but the reality is that the pandemic has also caused delays in that as well. So we do the best that we can to try to get the awards executed as quickly as possible, but there's just some things that we just don't have control over, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me adding to that, I think, Candace is absolutely right. There's so much inertia built into the system at the federal level. So everybody that's ever gotten a federal grant has experienced this. Even if it's not a SARE grant, it's just very frustrating to be waiting and waiting and waiting. I think my chair once said to me, he said, "I've never gotten a grant that I didn't regret." And there's that two-sided thing to grants. I think, but I did hear a point that I thought was worth. We're going to, I'm sure, discuss this, and again, it's people of goodwill have been working on this for years. But if we, but you did recommend sort of making it clear, I think, Najma, that that this interval is there. It's longer than we'd like. And it'd be helpful to communicate that to project recipients sort of in advance so they can plan for it. Is that right?
I think that's spot on, Paul. That would be probably the most intermediate and effective solution until such time, as the paperwork processing, those things can be worked out. It's all about managing expectations. And like I said, we had the expectation that the process would be lengthy. That's why we built in a month and a half in our work plan, but it turned out to be at least 3. And so in reading the request for proposals or the guidelines, if it's clearly stated there, even around the work plan or the timetable section, we recommend, SARE recommends that you build in XYZ number of months in your work plan, and you can use this for, whatever, just so that we're managing the expectations properly, and we're not making, because folks put aside other projects and they make plans on their farms. And again, dealing with folks who have already had difficulty working with systems, SARE, USDA, and many, many others. Not, this is not a unique thing. We just want to manage expectations well so that they'll want to be partners in the future, and that they can get to understand the process as well.
Yeah, I think, Paul, you hit it right on the bat, and Najwa just confirmed. Ultimately, if we go to the farmers who it is expectation management, as Najwa just said, if there's no way to be exact about when it will be ready and available to them. But if there's an average or of something like that, it's better to under promise and over deliver, and let them be happily surprised if they get it sooner than that range of time. And that way it does help with some of those issues of farmers and other recipients who have challenges with so many agencies and institutions that their expectations just can't be realistic about.
Okay, good. Any further comments on this, Candace, Brennan?
The only thing that I'll say is for my 3 smaller grant programs, I did put together a grant management guide that is provided to applicants who do get funded, and it does kind of go through that information in terms of how the process works from the time that the grant is awarded to the time that the grant project ends. And a lot of those timelines are built into that grant guide, and a similar guide is being developed for the research and education and the professional development program grants. They're not completed and not available yet.
But it's being worked on.
It is being worked on, yes.
Okay, good. So I'm making notes. Any other comments, folks, on that? Okay.
I also noted that the poll is completely empty, so wanted to just
Well,
check on that and see if it's not being seen, or at the very least, what the reasons were for people not responding to the poll, just so we could get some of that feedback and know. Is everyone seeing that there's a poll on their screen?
No, I am unable to see the poll.
Ah, okay, so that would be an excellent reason why it's not being done. Let's pull it down and put it back up again.
There it is. You see it now, Susan?
I see it. It's here. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. There you go.
That I did that
We
accidentally.
create solutions, right? It was playing hide and go seek.
So we'll give you a few minutes to fill that out then. And in the meantime, people may think of other things.
I'll point out too that on the publications that Dara mentioned, we have a stash of those here at Clemson at the PD Rec. We also have handy dandy thumb drives with most of those publications on them. If you ask for, let us know, particularly Jonathan, know that you would like one of those hardbound, or not hardbound, but bound, actually printed documents. If we got it, he'll happily send it to you. And all of those are available on the website at the National SARE for free by PDF. But if you're like me and you still like to hold a book in your hands and read it, let us know and we'll get it to you.
So I did have a question for the group. I was wondering if what sorts of challenges that you all face in your communities with regards to furthering sustainable agriculture, and where do you see the opportunities for SARE fitting into that?
I'll pipe in. When I introduced myself, I described myself as the director of the Master Beekeeping Program here for South Carolina. And what that program is, it is an education-driven program that encourages the beekeepers in the state to progress their education through different levels. So with that said, I've been working with Ben Powell at Clemson, and we've got several little projects we're working on, but they're not little, they're significant. And in discussing with him potential research projects, that's how this whole process and why I'm here is he said, you need to look into SARE grants. And so he forwarded me this information. So first, I would like to say thank you for all of you being here. I've certainly learned a lot. Thank you for your time. I'd like to connect with Matt and toss some ideas around. I mean, I can come up with 100 different things that we can look into as far as sustainable agriculture and pollinator health and everything from cover crops to loss of habitats. How do we increase the health of our pollinators, which increases agricultural production? So at this point, and this is how I responded in the poll, is I think it's almost overwhelming and how I need to drill down which focus areas are the most important. And I really want to know, and part of this is I need to get onto your website. You really gave some wonderful instructions on how to look at the information on the education and resources, Dara, so thank you for that. So I don't know if anyone else at the beginning of this journey feels overwhelmed, but in a good way, because there's so many potential projects that you guys, all your different pools of money, so to speak. I mean, it's amazing. And Matt, thank you if you let me reach out to you just to kind of throw my ideas out there to see if I can narrow down, because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I want to do something that is going to be important and translatable, and if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense, Susan. And one other thing I would suggest is just to hop on our site. You can search our entire history of the grants that we funded and look at the project report. You can narrow it down to just the beekeeping projects that we funded, and you can see what type of work we've done in funding beekeeping projects. So
I think that's wonderful. Y'all, I mean, I'm just blown away. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive, isn't it? I'm as I said, relatively new, so I still am in that phase of being in awe of all that we have. There was a comment on the chat, so take a look at that, folks. Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. Does that offer? It seems like that offers a solution. We have approached that with familiar faces, familiar voices, dealing with common issues.
Paul, I can't see the chat. Can you read what the comment
sure.
is?
Yeah, good point. Yeah. All right. So it says, an obstacle I've dealt with is that of folks having an apprehension to any quote government help. We have approached that with familiar faces, familiar voices, dealing with common issues. So yeah, using familiar faces and familiar voices, I presume you're helping to normalize the grant programs to show that they may reflect local values.
Yeah, and that's my comment. So one of the things that we deal with here in the Gullah community especially is a lot of our elders have had a lot of apprehension with dealing with any governmental quote unquote agencies. A lot of folks have been burned over the years and just have a historical apprehension. So seeing someone a bit younger, seeing someone who has actually dealt through the actual process and is willing to usher them along, they're more willing to walk that same path versus having someone who, from an outside, if you will, walk in trying to offer a new approach to a common problem.
Yeah, one of the things that I would say about that too, yeah, like you, Daryl, you've had some experience with the SARE program through some of the funding opportunities that you've had through SARE, and so you could take those experiences that you've had with the SARE program and share that knowledge with other individuals who are seeking some type of support that the SARE program could provide. Another way of also approaching it would be to identify farmers whom who have received SARE grants in the past, who could also be used as a conduit of knowledge of SARE information in terms of grants and SARE resources. So that's how I would approach it from that standpoint.
So is this mentoring? Is it, if I put in my notes, this is sort of a mentoring concept, or does that not fit what you're saying? You both are saying.
Absolutely.
If I could add to that, I think the millennial age persons and some of us baby boomers have the concept of influencers, that even if it's not someone that's already received a grant, if there's an influencer in a particular community who may be willing to listen, they then would be able to use PQ, which is positive peer pressure, and in serving as a voice for, basically encouraging buy-in. And this works in, this isn't an agriculture related concept. It works in anything. Just generally finding the town crier to be part of your team in some way, shape, or form, and allowing that person to help once they actually believe in whatever the concept, project, initiative is. So definitely finding farmers and others who already have gotten the grants, to use them as examples, use their testimonies to encourage their communities, but also maybe looking for other people who people just pay attention to, people listen to for whatever reason, positively, of course, and seeing if you can get them to join on and becoming a, a grassroots PR.
Yeah, thanks, Dara. Sorry, were you about to say something, Brendan? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for us as we do outreach. I can't speak for all the other federally funded programs, but for Southern SARE, as we do outreach, we make sure that we deliver on what we tell people. So that's why I always encourage people to apply for a small sponsorship, and I do everything that I can to make sure that sponsorship gets funded and that project gets done. So speaking to Daryl's concerns, there's a gentleman down in their area that apparently had a really, really, really bad experience with SARE like 25 years ago. I didn't even know what SARE was 25 years ago. I don't even know if we were broken out into regions by then. But it left such a bad taste in his mouth that he really has anything good to say about us. And I think that's what Daryl's trying to say about the hesitancy to deal with organizations. So I think it's really important. So now we know that Najma has pointed this problem out to us, but we need to go back and at least discuss it and come up with some possible solutions other than saying we just had this phone call with her.
I was going to mention something else that being on the administrative council, that all AC members are also supposed to be kind of ambassadors of the Southern SARE program. I think that's one of the great things of having such a diverse administrative council, is that hopefully we can, even like Dara said, is that we can, administrative council members can also be the influencers and the people within the community who can share the SARE program and the resources available to those communities. And so, I mean, from my involvement, I've been able to share with kind of my network here in Texas, a lot of the resources I think people aren't aware of that SARE has available.
I know we're getting short on time, but let me throw out a quick question. In Kentucky, I know of an NGO that works with farmers to write grants. Does that exist here in South Carolina? An organization that does that? Yeah,
there are organizations that do exist. But don't ask me to actually list any, but there are organizations that are non-governmental, which will help with that process.
Okay.
And I wanted to thank Daryl for sharing what he has. I'm from the Caribbean, so much of the same mindset in terms of people not wanting anything to do with government assistance exists wherever the diaspora is. And so from Geechee down to those in the Caribbean, it's all the same hesitancy, just in different colors and layers. So finding ways that works is important for the entire region and probably the nation, because it's the same things that we'll have to deal with everywhere. So thank you again for what you share.
So we've just got a few minutes. Any last comments from anyone? Cool. We got a lot of good feedback. So.
Thank you for completing the poll. So we got 100% in those various fields. We appreciate that.
Thanks, you all. Take care.